The number of species that we now move is unprecedented.
We would be amazed by the number of living things in people's luggage.
As a species moves, it automatically is invading new areas where it didn't exist before.
We can't predict what they will do once they get loose.
They can transform in every sense how a community works.
It's like something out of science fiction. Unsettling transformations are sweeping across the planet. And clue by clue, investigators are assembling a new picture of Earth. They suspect we've entered a time of faster global change than any human being has ever witnessed. Where are we headed? What can we do to alter the course? In this confusing era, only one thing is certain. These are strange days on planet Earth. These are strange days, though you might not know it if your world stopped here. Step out of the ebb and flow of daily life, change your lens a little, and you can start to see disturbances. I'm not talking about the human face on Mars. I'm talking about real events, vanishing polar ice, coral reefs as dead as bleached bones, frogs that are both male and female at the same time. But what do these events mean? Are they just random ups and downs, or are they part of some worldwide crash? For every voice of doom,
It's the end of the world.
someone else will tell you that the planet is doing pretty well, thank you. So what's really going on? That's what these films will try to sort out as we follow scientific investigators on their cases. In a way, then, this is a mystery series, except our detectives have yellow tape that encircles the entire planet. This first episode begins with clues. Researchers are finding plants and animals in places where they don't belong. Alien species, they're called. Think of them as the first wave of an assault that could drive the greatest extinction since the end of the dinosaurs. So what's causing this invasion? And what can we do to slow this rising tide of aliens? Jim Carlton is looking for aliens, and he's not alone. A team of investigators is conducting what's called a rapid assessment to figure out what new species have landed. It's part of an increasingly urgent global quest. Alien species have invaded every continent. They have enormous powers. Some are undermining the very land under our feet. They're spreading disease. They're devouring our buildings. And every year, the number of new arrivals goes up. On the New England coast, marine ecologist Jim Carlton is trying to figure out what this movement of plants and animals means.
It's a juvenile Maya.
Okay.
He'll spend 1 hour on this dock, one of 20 he'll inspect in a week.
When we first enter a new site, it's always a mystery as to what's going to be there. We're always interested in whether anything new has shown up. Around the world, we've seen tremendous numbers of invasions in the last quarter of the 20th century, and these appear to be unabated as we move into the 21st century.
It sucks onto your hand. It'll try to attach itself. I think I have some in here. Yeah.
No Liliana out here.
Few people even notice this curtain of life on our shores. But Carlton has always had a sharp eye. His fascination with aliens began with a chance encounter when he was a boy growing up in California.
In the fall of 1962, I inadvertently stepped on this colony of tube worms, which drew my attention to it. I realized I had never seen anything like this before in my life. A week or so later, I discovered in the local nature center the same exact specimens with a label that indicated that they were from the South Seas. And this absolutely piqued my interest into how could something from so far arrive in this little lagoon in Oakland.
Carlton was hooked on the puzzle of how plants and animals spread.
According to this. And this has little spines coming out, orange stripe. Metridium, yeah.
In a sense, species have always been restless. Living things continually test the boundaries of their ranges. While species are ready to grab an extra inch, we've come along and offered them an extra mile. We've built a global system that transports plants and animals along with other cargo. They are sometimes passengers, sometimes stowaways, and they can now leapfrog over nearly impassable barriers. Every year brings more volume, more speed, more alien arrivals. And all of us are fueling the traffic, unwittingly, every day. With the relentless growth of global transportation, Carlton believes we may be pushing our luck.
With the arrival of every new species, it's very much like Russian roulette. We spin a new species into the environment, and the potential for catastrophic impact to society, to the economy, to the environment is always there.
Carlton is aware that invasions in different parts of the world are adding up to a profound and alarming story. Many of us never see the uninvited guests in our midst, but ignorance is seldom bliss. People in New Orleans can no longer trust the floor beneath their feet. Aliens have invaded, and they're spreading throughout the South, destroying property in their path. Biologist Claudia Regal knows that some homeowners have lost everything. All because of an implacable horde of animals.
They work 24 hours a day. They don't take breaks. They're moving up and down at night, during the day, They're always searching for food.
Riegel and others suspect these interlopers began their journey half a world away, decades ago, thanks to a stroke of a pen. Tokyo Bay. General Douglas MacArthur presides over Japan's formal surrender in World War II. U.S. forces in Japan and China pack up to return home. They make crates from local wood. The crates end up in garbage dumps near military bases in the South. But the discarded containers are not necessarily empty. The wood is likely teeming with stowaways. Aliens. Formosan subterranean termites. Over time, a dangerous brood builds up its numbers. But no one knows that they're even here, let alone what they're capable of doing. Insects are small, but in large numbers they can become an awesome, destructive force. New Orleans termite invaders lie low for years. But in the 1960s, the Big Easy starts singing the blues.
Now you think that you got troubles?
They're all over the place. I mean, you can't even walk sometimes. They'll just hit you all up in the face and your mouth.
I have actually had them swarm in the door and in the windows.
It's when they spawn, they get in your hair and everything.
Cause you know you got trouble.
They ran us out of City Park. They were so bad.
Sleep in your night. Termites is tearing up your home. You can't sleep at night. Somebody termites, baby.
You know, you need some help. You need federal aid down here.
Yes, I'm trying to tell you, I got the termite blues. Talking about the termite blues. Hey, can somebody help a blues man?
A pump house is only one of thousands of buildings under siege. Few, though, are more vital. Without buildings like this, New Orleans would be underwater. One floor below, Riegel investigates the invaders' tactics. The swarms have disappeared. The only clues are wings jettisoned by the termites after their mating flight. The aliens are now hidden in the walls, building up new colonies. Why are these newcomers so successful? Riegel knows that the odds were against them when they arrived in a place so far from their native land. But the invaders got a lucky break. Southern hospitality. The Louisiana climate is hot and sticky, a perfect match to the insect's home in China. Even better, New Orleans is built of termite food, wood. And one talent of the new arrivals gave them a big edge over native termite species. The locals only nest underground, but the foreigners nest not only below, but also above ground, where they're less likely to be exposed to insecticides. And now one city block can host 10 alien nests, and their feeding trails, sometimes hundreds of feet long.
In the South, I wouldn't say if you're going to get termites, but it's when you're going to get termites. They're everywhere.
Most of the French Quarter's homes are infested with termites. The others are, or should be, under surveillance. For those who turn a blind eye, the penalties can be extreme. Given the magnitude of the infestation, can the beast that's eating New Orleans be slowed down? Regal's first step is to locate the aliens. She's looking for the supply lines. They're easier to find than the headquarters, the nests. Below these metal discs are bait stations, strips of wood and a circuit printed on tasty paper. The signal tells Regal the stations are empty.
We're trying very hard to eliminate these termites, but actually what we're going to be doing is managing these termites because they keep finding a way of rebounding and finding new areas to infest.
To control the termites, Regal hopes to exploit one aspect of their lives. Colonies are intensely social, a quality that explains the success of all termites. These insects groom each other. They communicate by chemical trails. They do instant messaging by vibrating their bodies. And most important for Regal, they share food. After visiting a dozen vacant stations, Regal finds an occupied one near the French Quarter. She'll replace the wood bait with poison-soaked paper. Workers will carry it back to colony headquarters. In as little as 3 months, the nest could be destroyed. New Orleans is a lesson for people everywhere. It's easy to bring in an alien species. It can be all but impossible to remove it. In the South, the proverbial ounce of prevention was worth $1 billion a year. It's not only in New Orleans that alien species have wrecked property. In the early 1900s, a small creature with a taste for wood collapsed wharves in San Francisco Bay. The cost? Billions in today's dollars. In 1929, the Mediterranean fruit fly was spotted in the U.S. Potential cost to crops in California alone, $1 billion a year. And in the 1980s, zebra mussels from the Caspian Sea clogged pipes in the Great Lakes region. Price tag? Another $1 billion. But in the war against alien species, more than money might be at stake. Invaders could have the power to injure our bodies and compromise our health. Lake Victoria is the world's largest tropical lake. It's also the site of growing health threats that many researchers link to invasive species. One predator dominates these waters. The Nile crocodile. The croc is a threat to every large animal from the depths to the shores. Reports of croc attacks on people are increasing in Uganda. But the number of these predators isn't rising. The light of day brings no clear explanations to Ugandans. And it's not only croc attacks they puzzle over. Other medical problems are increasing. Dysentery cases are up. Malaria is flourishing. And so is another tropical disease, schistosomiasis. It causes abdominal pain, chills, rashes, and bloody urine.
So, Mehdi, show me where you say you're feeling the pain.
Here.
Okay, so let me examine you. Okay. Do you sometimes go to the lake?
Yes, we go fishing along the banks.
Okay.
What's going wrong in Uganda? Entomologist James Ogwong has been studying Lake Victoria for years.
When you bring a new alien species into a new environment, you tend to alter the ecological setup in the areas where they have been introduced.
Ogwong believes he can account for the croc attacks. Crocs are a native species, but an alien, the Nile perch, was added to the lake half a century ago. It thrived on a diet of small native fish. About 200 of these species, fish found nowhere else in the world, quickly vanished. It has been called the biggest mass extinction of vertebrates in modern times. But what about the crocodile attacks? The introduced fish attracted large numbers of new fishermen to the lake. With more people on the lake, crossing paths with a crocodile became more common. Attacks are often fatal. Uganda's other health woes, rising diseases, are trickier to explain. But Ogwong suspects his country is suffering because of a different invader, one he traces to a romance that took place decades ago. Legend has it that a foreign engineer working in nearby Rwanda in the 1960s falls in love. The man presents his fiancée with an exotic plant, native to South America, water hyacinth. Presumably, the couple's love grows over the years. Certainly the water hyacinth does. No one is sure exactly how the foreign plant escapes. But somehow, clumps float downstream. In 1989, water hyacinth was spotted in Lake Victoria. 7 years later, the weed had clogged 80% of Uganda's shoreline. For fishermen and their families, it was a disaster.
Water hyacinth has proved that when an alien plant is not well handled, it can cause enormous impact in the lives of the local people.
Getting out to fishing grounds became a terrible struggle. A reduced catch and lowered income threatened to trigger widespread famine. And under the suffocating blanket of weeds, rotting vegetation fouled drinking water, which comes straight from the lake.
Water hyacinth was causing diseases, diarrhea, dysentery, that kind of thing, because water was so dirty.
And Ogwang thinks he also knows how a plant could promote infectious diseases like malaria and schistosomiasis. Both diseases rely on water, and the alien plant creates stagnant pools, great breeding spots for mosquitoes carrying the malaria parasite. Meanwhile, along the edges of these floating weeds, water snails that harbor the schistosomiasis parasite find good places to lay their eggs. At his laboratory on the outskirts of Uganda's capital, James Ogwang is looking for a way to fight the invader. The weed is taking over, Ogwang believes, because it left its predators behind in its native Brazil. Why not import natural enemies? Ogwang himself carried them into Uganda, 1,200 weevils in small cups. After making sure the weevils didn't have a taste for local crops, Ogwang starts breeding his insect army. Soon, he's ready to deploy his forces. But biocontrol, introducing one alien species to fight another, has had many spectacular failures. In the years before World War II, some Pacific islands were plagued by a population explosion of rats, uninvited aliens. Someone had an inspiration. Why not import another species to smite the rats? Monitor lizards. One small problem. The lizards are active during the day when the rats sleep. At night, monitors sleep while rats cause trouble. The two species rarely encountered one another. And so the huge reptiles satisfied their hunger with poultry. Clearly the giant lizards needed an alternative diet. So a third alien species was imported for this purpose: cane toads. As food, they have a shortcoming. They're poisonous. With the death of the monitor lizards, there was an explosion of cane toads, which were eaten by another alien species: cats. Without cats, the rat population exploded. Biocontrol is no job for amateurs. On Lake Victoria, fishermen are pitching in, helping to spread the weevil-infested water hyacinth. And the imported insects quickly start feasting. The health of Ugandans now depends on insect appetites. The adults punch holes in the leaves, which then ride lower in the water and catch less sunlight. Meanwhile, just out of sight, the larvae are doing an inside job. Within the leaf stalks, it's like living in a food trough. When the larvae are ready to mature, they move underwater. Each builds a shelter out of root hairs, damaging the weed's ability to take up food. In these woven underwater baskets, larvae become adults. Top floor, foliage. And now the next generation starts another cycle of constructive destruction. To find out if the weevils are doing their job, Ogwang surveys Lake Victoria. Water hyacinth is declining sharply. The surviving plants are weak and infested. Ogwang's biocontrol program is working.
It was amazing that this kind of very tiny things would do anything useful. I remember a comment somehow that what can these tiny weevils do? These are a joke. These weevils are a joke. Kind of 5 years after we had released the weevils, miracles happened and the hyacinth is no more.
With the alien weed coming under control, Lake Victoria is becoming healthier. Fishermen have better access to food again. Drinking water is less fouled with rotting vegetation, and a foothold for diseases like malaria and schistosomiasis has been sharply reduced. The weevil's triumph over water hyacinth is an uncommon success story. In many other places, people are still struggling with alien species. Asian tiger mosquitoes arrived in North America in the mid-1980s in shipments of used tires. These insects can carry West Nile virus. The United States is being invaded by fire ants from South America and killer bees, escaped African hybrids. Both species are taking human lives as they spread from the south. The brown tree snake from New Guinea has invaded the Pacific island of Guam. With its venom and strangling coils, it poses a potentially lethal threat to children. But invasive species can do more than threaten our bodies. So there's an upsurge of health problems around Lake Victoria, and buildings are tumbling down in New Orleans. Well, we can fight disease, and we can build stronger houses, but that's not the point. Not long ago, these far-flung glitches would have been written off as white noise, isolated events without significance. But now we realize they may be warnings of a deeper unrest. They may be undermining the very earth on which we stand. Botanist David Duffy is tracking an invader, one that threatens to send Hawaii's soil crashing into the sea.
This is a new thing loose in the forest. There's a new species there that's changing the way the forest works.
Duffy believes that one particular alien species is poised to trigger massive landslides. A new source of erosion is a dangerous prospect for these islands. Erosion is already a menace in Hawaii. The runoff can be devastating to native species. As the islands wash away, coral is bathed in sediment. Over time, this treatment can kill it and threaten the creatures of the reef. On land, erosion threatens thousands of species found nowhere else in the world. Even without erosion, these unique plants and animals are already on the retreat, under pressure by pushy invasive species.
Hawaii does look beautiful. It looks like paradise, but most of the palms are all from somewhere else. The parrots are from somewhere else.
Hawaii is so thoroughly invaded that most people can recognize few native species. The flowers in the leis, sugarcane, macadamia nuts, even pineapples. Most of what we think of as typically Hawaiian comes from someplace else. But none of these is what Duffy is pursuing. His quarry, the species that threatens to cause landslides, arrived in Hawaii because someone was seduced by beauty. In the mid-1800s, an explorer in the jungles of Mexico encounters a tree with thick leaves and beautiful purple undersides. Smitten, he ships his treasure to Europe, where it becomes a sensation among botanists. In 1961, a botanical garden in Hawaii welcomes the plant as a gift. And soon, Miconia is being sold at nurseries. It becomes a popular decoration. No one could have foreseen that the plant would turn into a dangerous, destabilizing menace. Plants seem gentle enough, but members of this kingdom can be as ferocious as anything on four legs. Plants can fight for resources, use chemical warfare, and strangle each other. In the case of Miconia, its escape from backyards and gardens didn't take long. It had an accomplice, the Japanese white-eye, another imported species. The bird excels at spreading seeds, which Miconia has in abundance. Each flowering head has a few hundred small fruits, each of which holds about 100 tiny seeds. A single tree can get out of control.
Each flowering event may produce up to 3 million seeds, and this happens 3 times a year. You have the potential for just explosive growth of these trees across the forest.
In only 40 years, the invasive tree spread over 10,000 acres on the Big Island. And this, Duffy fears, puts Hawaii at grave risk of landslides. How a foreign plant weakens the soil can be found in its tactics for taking over a forest. It grows fast, casting shade on native plants. As Hawaiian plants die, all that remains to hold the soil is Miconia's sparse, shallow roots.
The ground gets very loose, the whole earth can just slip, and the plants can just take off on sort of a toboggan ride down the hillside.
Miconia is so easily spread that Duffy wears dedicated shoes on the job to avoid making the problem worse himself. How can such a prolific invader be stopped?
Here's a patch I hadn't noticed before.
Ecologist Greg Asner is trying to find a way to identify the alien tree from aerial images.
Position ourselves directly over the patch and put me on the sunlit side.
Flying over the Big Island, Asner measures light reflected from the forest, including parts of the spectrum the human eye can't see.
Remote sensing is very important to us for mapping Myconia and other invasive species because it's nearly impossible, given the terrain in Hawaii, for ground crews and field personnel alone to be able to get in and actually map where all of these infestations are.
These helicopter measurements must now be linked to what's taking place on the ground.
This is a good point.
Asner gathers Myconia leaves and records for each one a precise longitude, latitude, and altitude using a device that can read signals from global positioning satellites, even through a thick forest canopy.
There are plenty of satellites.
Really? How many are you getting?
10.
In Asner's version of a tailgate party, he next measures how each alien leaf reflects light. He's now ready to make connections. Asner compares leaf measurements on the ground to the canopy spectrum measured from the helicopter. But he doesn't stop there. He uses images of whole ecosystems shot from converted U-2 spy planes, and even bigger views of entire regions taken by a satellite. Asner has put these different views together. The result? From the air, he can identify Myconia infestations, the orange spots in these images, before they get out of control. It's a big break. The battle against the invader can now kick into high gear, and not a moment too soon.
Rappel on!
Rappel on!
Rappelling!
Go for it! Let us know when you need to pick up tension.
You're good, Jen.
Copy that.
I call it the green Ebola. It's deadly, it's spreading, and it's going to kill our forests and our native ecosystems unless we stop it. And that's going to mean that they're going to be replaced by just a single purple-leafed monster that takes over everything.
Kill, kill!
So every time I get depressed and think we're losing, I come across a group that's restoring a part of forest, or even some crazy person who just refuses to let some species die. People are out there and they care.
Thanks to efforts like this, the alien is being contained on the Big Island. Fighting invaders doesn't always require specialized gear and training. Around the world, ordinary people are struggling to save their own neighborhoods. On the Big Sur coast in California, a group called Weed Warriors is slaying ice plant, a South African import which threatens native plants on bluffs and dunes. In turn, South Africans are fighting trees from Australia, trees which promote dangerous fires and divert water from people who need it. So what does it take to stir people into action? We may put up a fight when an alien species threatens a cherished landscape, prospect Hawaiians are already facing. We may take action when exotic plants and animals damage our health and our homes. But what about a menace that's less visible? Many say there's one just beyond the horizon. It's not just another clue. It's what all of the clues have been pointing to. When everything moves everywhere, what will survive? Jim Carlton is worried about where the great reshuffling of life is taking us. The Port of Oakland, in Carlton's hometown, may offer a glimpse of the future. cargo is arriving here in San Francisco Bay at twice the rate it did only 20 years ago. It's part of a global pattern of accelerating transportation. More vessels, more volume, more speed.
Some of the most outstandingly abundant species have simply arrived in the past 10 or 20 years. This is a conveyor belt of species coming through the Golden Gate.
As the globalization of trade drives the globalization of species, we're creating a strange, jumbled world, unlike anything this planet has seen. Each arriving ship is an opportunity for invaders. It's not just the containers that may hold stowaway species. Inside can be millions of gallons of seawater to help balance the ship. When a single vessel's ballast tanks are emptied dockside, hundreds of species from faraway ports may be seeking a new home.
At any given hour, on any given day, at least 7,000 species are likely in motion, traveling across oceans and between oceans, for a startling potential for what may be, in fact, 1 or 2 new invasions somewhere in the world every day.
How has this alien tsunami changed San Francisco Bay? To get an update, Carlton joins members of the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. Collecting plates have been underwater for up to 2 years. Today, researchers will get their first look at what is stuck.
All right. All kinds of stuff on this. This is probably one of the Japanese species. And intermixed is a little bit of Helicondria, a sponge from New England, introduced with oysters. We have a Siona here. This is a sea squirt native to the North Atlantic Ocean.
Remarkably, Carlton finds only a single native species.
We've got one example of a native species. This is the native oyster Austria, a species amazingly abundant once in the 19th century. So this may well have been one of the more common...
99% of marine life by weight in much of San Francisco Bay now comes from someplace else.
Like this right here, this whole piece.
Such a rapid global remix is unprecedented in the history of life.
We've got a base of oysters.
If natives are already a 1% minority living in the margins, what might happen next?
Number of ascidians and sponges.
Some researchers, including Carlton, see the potential for a dark outcome. Extinction on an epic scale.
Austria conchophylla.
The opportunity for species to move was limited for most of the history of life. Big animals sometimes transported smaller animals and seeds, but only as far as they could swim, fly, or walk. And from time to time, a lucky species would survive an ocean odyssey. But movement was slow and rare, until we came along. Now with the growing traffic of ships and planes, eventually, almost everything will have a chance to move everywhere. Fully interconnected, Earth will be like a planet with a single continent. Many researchers believe that a single connected piece of land can support far fewer species than the same area carved up into isolated islands and continents. Species without borders means many fewer species, which is why some predict that up to 2/3 of land mammals may become extinct. Worldwide, invasive species are already the second greatest cause of extinction behind habitat destruction.
Now we have a very different view of the world, which is, in part, that no matter what is past, do no further harm, but also more profoundly recognizing that our ability to predict what will happen when we insert a species into an ecosystem remains extraordinarily poor.
For as long as we have walked this earth, we've taken plants and animals with us. For company, food, and decoration. And of course, we've always had our share of stowaways. As we gain the technology to move more and more, faster and faster, we failed to imagine the dangers ahead. If we thought about our living cargo, it was often with the childlike belief that it would only improve our lives in new lands. Now that we know the destructive power of alien species, will the great reshuffling continue unabated? What is it worth to be more cautious in our individual actions as travelers and consumers? To be more cautious as societies, watching over the vehicles and vessels that tie us together? What will it cost not to?